When UCF decided in the early 2000s to leave the aging Citrus Bowl and build a football stadium on campus, it made what would become one of the most consequential investments in the history of the university. For only roughly $55 million, UCF didn't just get a place to play football on campus, it helped put the program on the map, by my admittedly rough estimates, between eliminating the cost of renting out the Citrus Bowl and the newfound revenue of hosting their own events. The economic value of the original stadium investment may have been recouped within roughly a decade and possibly even faster, but the bigger payoff of building the stadium wasn't the obvious financial benefits. It was stronger recruiting, a deeper engaged alumni base, more national exposure, better fundraising opportunities, and a deeper football culture that could grow alongside the rapidly expanding school. While 20 years later, other programs are playing catch-up, building the stadium is a huge reason why UCF athletics is where it is today. We can surmise about the consequences of 2017, 18, 2013 without the stadium, but truly it's basically a fact that without the stadium, UCF would not be in the Big 12 today. But Bright House Network Stadium was built for the UCF of 2007. A program barely more than a decade into life at the FBS level, and less than 10 years removed from Dante Culpepper giving UCF its first real taste of national relevance. This was the program averaging about 25,000 fans per game, fresh off its first conference championship and its first bowl appearance, still a few years away from actually winning a bowl game for the first time. They had only recently escaped that strange 8-16 two-year detour through the MAC, which, thinking about the UCF of today, feels laughably ancient. In 2005, renowned UCF president John C. Hitt was discussing plans to build the stadium and said he was incredulous that it could be done for that money. It's no secret, today's Acrisure bounce house was built on the cheap and wasn't designed for the program UCF would become. After all, as of recording this, we're just a few hours removed from the new $90 million renovation of the Roth Tower, their grand opening ceremony. Let's get real. For the UCF of today, the bounce house is viewed as one of the worst Power 4 stadiums in the country, and nearly unanimously the worst in the Big 12. Don't get me wrong, I love the bounce house. I'm a UCF fan first and foremost, so I can appreciate how when it's going strong, the bounce house is one of the better environments in college football. But on the other hand, I'm also a stadium nerd, and if you take off the black and gold goggles for a bit and compare it to what UCF would consider its peers, it becomes more obvious the cheap utilitarian stadium built for a 2007 UCF program is lacking. Now, to be clear, UCF is going to upgrade the stadium eventually. I'm not recording this as a plead with the athletics department to bulldoze the whole thing and start over. No. They'll get around to making necessary improvements when the time is right. My goal with this video is not to make demands or say that my wants and desires are objectively true or the right and correct choice for the athletics department, more to show ideas of what can be, given a good vision and a bit of creativity behind ideas, and the benefits of building the program for the long term and not going down the tempting path of cheap renovation for renovation's sake. You might have seen my video UCF Gameday of the Future, which in of itself was a sequel to UCF Gameday in Minecraft. In fact, you probably came from that video. When I recreated the stadium in Minecraft, going on to start the whole Build UCF project in general, that's a whole other video, I wanted to build out of the stadium so that I could build my own stadium, as if I was giving full planning and decision making for renovating the whole stadium. And of course, Game Day of the Future is the product of that. At first glance, something like the Castle Stadium in the video would seem laughably impossible for the current UCF program. But with this video, I'm going to go through everything I changed and hopefully explain how it isn't as far-fetched as you might think. We've talked about it, we've seen it, but here is that stadium itself. Yes, this is in Minecraft, it's a video game, but I'd ask that you look past the simple pixels and blocks and see it for the venue and the medium that it truly is. This is part of Build UCF. It's a about a 60-person project I'm the head of that we're recreating all of UCF's campus in the video in Minecraft. And I think it's pretty clear that this is more than just a video game piece of blocks put together and more of an artistic rendition. So with that being said, the ideas behind this stadium are, you don't need the entire thing to build this. It's a culmination of ideas. Each one holds up on their own. For example, this right here we'll talk about later. You could just do this right now, and you don't need a big old castle or moat to do that. It'd be a long-term project, probably 20, 30 years, and it'd be in phases, like one thing at a time. So why do this? Why build a crazy castle? Well, for starters, UCF is going to upgrade the stadium at some point. It may be 5 years, it may be 10 years, it may be 50. In our lifetime, they will upgrade the stadium. And would you rather they continue doing upgrades like some other programs are doing, like cheap in-zone renovations or cutout seats, or like Houston I showed a picture of, just cladding their outside with wrought iron metal? Would you rather have renovations that date themselves in 5 years? Would you rather have a college football mecca? Do you want a renovation that's purely practical, or do you want to create hallowed grounds for your school? Well, my goal here is to show that you can do that, and it's more reasonable than you think. It just takes a lot of planning in the long term. First of all, you need to decide today what you want the stadium to look like in the long term. And every renovation project, like I said, you wouldn't build all this at once, you build it in chunks. You build every project you build would make your way to it. Decisions today for greatness, make them one at a time, one at a time, one at a time, and one day you will have something like this. The most iconic venues in college football weren't built in a day. They weren't built all at once. No, they were added on and added on and added on. My goal is that the things that they add on are not things that will get torn out in 20, 30, 40 years, but rather things that build to this. So, why a castle? Well, I mean, first of all, we are the UCF Knights. How can you be a Knights school without a castle, right? If Rutgers can do it, if Kansas State, Notre Dame, FSU to a lower extent. I mean, Kansas State's the Wildcats, and they got a big old castle right there. I mean, if we want other examples, there's tons of soccer stadiums in Europe, a lot of high school stadiums. Medieval or medieval adjacent castle-esque architecture is very common in stadium design, more common than you might think, especially in college football. I keep bringing up Kansas State. I've said earlier in the video, that tower they built is 13 years old, but you wouldn't be able to tell. You'd think it's something from like Ohio State, 110 years old, but they built it today. Well, 13 years ago, but they built it so that later down the line, it could be one of the greatest things ever, and it is. Well, I think the best thing to do when touring this stadium is start with what I kept, with what hasn't changed. And if you recognize this is, of course, the new Roth Tower, which, by the way, just opened and is opening its first season today. The build actually isn't perfect, unlike most of the stuff in this server, because until now we really haven't gotten enough video of it, but you still get the idea. And let me just say, I absolutely applaud the athletics department for what they did for here. Everything that I've seen looks absolutely fantastic. I haven't had a chance to get inside it yet, but I have seen a ton of videos, and they hit it out of the park. This is where you want this great, sleek, modern aesthetic that'll generate you a lot of revenue. And that's the key thing, is in stadium design, the most important thing for renovations is revenue generation. You may not like it, but they're not building this without a reason. Unless you get a huge donation, athletics departments aren't going to front the money for something that's not going to directly make them money. Revenue generation is what comes first, and in my design, I've actually prioritized that. There's a lot of opportunities for premium seating, which is far and away the most important thing and what you see the most renovations doing, as we see here and here and here, but I'll get into those a little later. Some other things that are the same is the video board. This video board looks a lot different. I know it doesn't perfectly look like a video board. It doesn't look like it is in real life, but actually it's exactly where it is today, just with a shell around it. I haven't changed it in the slightest, aside from putting some stuff around it. So it's identical to where it is today, and frankly, it's big enough for what we need. I know, I believe Illinois just got one of the biggest video boards in college football, but I really see that more as a gimmick instead of what you need. Another thing that's exactly the same, if we come over here to the east sideline, it looks a little different, but this is the Wayne Dench Sports Center. Excuse me. And this is not changed in the slightest, it's only added to around it. So, an overall philosophy, like I said, building this stadium could take 20 to 30 years if they started today. Obviously, they're not going to start today. My goal in this build is about 70,000 seats. Now, UCF's at 45,000 right now, and you may say, what the heck are you talking about? We can't have 70,000. And usually, I'd be right. Usually, me personally, I'm one of those guys that's in the replies saying, of people saying, oh, we need to double the stadium capacity. I'm usually the realist in there that's like, well, frankly, we're not going to sell out anytime soon. If we do that, that's not going to happen. But so why did I say 70,000 for this? Well, attendance is actually the highest it's ever been on average. And if you haven't noticed, since we've joined the Big 12, we haven't been doing good. But we've been averaging the highest attendance we ever had. If and when we ever get back to, winning 8, 9, 10 games a year, I guarantee you the current bounce house is going to be sold out every game for years to come. On top of that, building something like this induces demand. We saw that when we built the campus in general. We went from about 25,000 in the Citrus Bowl to averaging about 35,000. Now, obviously, some of that is the fact that it's on campus and a new thing, but building something great brings people here. It doesn't matter if the team's good or bad. People want to come into big venues like that. And on top of all that, by the time this would be built anyway, 20, 30 years from now, we've seen how UCF has grown in the past 20 years. UCF will probably grow even bigger by then. So the grown capacity is growing with the program that will have grown anyway. But you just want to work to it slowly. And this is how you work to it, is by building stuff like this. So I keep saying that this is more plausible than it sounds. And I haven't really gone into depth on why. You may be looking at me like, what the heck are you talking about? This thing, 70,000 seats, it looks like a castle that has a moat. There's no way that they'd actually have the money to do this. And let me talk about my 3 secret weapons that UCF has. First of all is the Tourism Development Tax. This is what actually funded the entire tower. Orlando takes a tax from all hotels that has to be spent on furthering tourism in the area. And of course they approved that and nearly funded the entire tower just off of that. So no money came from the athletics department, really. It all came from the city wanting to donate money to further tourism. Now, obviously, if you're well kept into the news, you may know that we just got shot down from our latest TDT proposal. However, that was always a bit more of a stretch, mostly talking about TV stuff and building a softball stadium and soccer, which was more of a stretch, but is still likely to come one day with revised proposals. But something like this, which would get tens of thousands more people every Saturday and become a true mecca of the sport, would generate a ton more revenue. It's even more justifiable for the TDT money than this tower. So an application for something even vaguely as ambitious as this would definitely get the TDT money. The second and most important secret weapon that UCF can take advantage of is combining projects. Now, I'm going to go a little deeper into this, but look at FSU's Doak Walker Stadium. One of the best in the country, at least the most iconic from the outside. Its brick exterior wraps around it, and it's instantly recognizable as a castle mecca of the sport. It didn't used to look like that. Not 20, 30, 40 years ago. It was pretty plain. But they did something special, something that a lot of schools have done. They put a bunch of classrooms, offices, and dorms in their walls. And that's how they funded the pretty gorgeous exterior of the stadium. We'll go into that a little deeper later. But let's talk about some key stadium design requirements that they should go through. First of all, you'll notice there is no concrete circle around the bottom of the stands. The main concourse is on the second level, whereas today the main concourse is just on the floor right underneath the stands. So why? Why would we do that? It's cheaper, it's easier. Certainly, it doesn't. So let's go into some of the stadium design notes. So let's go into some of the key stadium design ideas that they should take advantage of. First and foremost, you'll know that UCF Stadium today has two concrete rings, one on the ground floor and one, which is exactly where it is there, higher up. You've noticed, probably, that I've taken out that lower concrete ring. So how do you get around? Well, the main concourse is actually on the second level. Now, you may look at me like, wow, that's expensive. Why not just keep it on the ground floor? And I'd say there are many, many good reasons why you would put the main concourse on the second floor. And it's actually something that nearly every stadium does. For example, every single NFL stadium, your main thoroughfare concourse isn't at grade with the field. On top of that, by my rough estimations, nearly 63 out of 67 Power 4 stadiums, that includes us, all have not at-grade concourses. So what I'm trying to say is, where the fans walk around is not where the field level is. If you want an example of this, every single arena, or specifically Raymond James, may be more familiar to UCF audience. Raymond James Stadium, you take an escalator up. If you notice, I have some modeled out escalators here, and then you walk a little bit down. I'll show some pictures of that. So why does this matter? Why does nearly everyone do this? Well, there's a few fantastic reasons. For one, even crowd distribution. When everybody has to squeeze through one little hole, in real life, UCF Stadium, everybody comes right here. This is where the band sits, and they go over right here, or they go up and take the stairs down, and that's not great for crowding. Everybody's rushing in one direction. You want something, ideally, it's in the middle. I put it up top. The exit is in the middle where people can be separated, and you don't have to go too far down if you're coming down, and you don't have to go too far up if you're coming up. Another key reason is circulation. There's guest areas, and then there's maintenance areas, there's locker rooms, storage, kitchen, trash, maintenance, TV. There's a lot of things that guests don't see, or at least shouldn't be part of, right? And right now, UCF Stadium, you're about 10 feet away from them on the regular concourse. By raising the concourse, you actually allow all of that unsightly or necessary behind-the-scenes stuff to be at its own thing, undisturbed by the masses of guests. On the other hand, it's more aesthetically pleasing. You see today, in UCF Stadium today, there's a big concrete sidewalk that separates fans from the field, and it makes you so far from where you are. As an example, as one of the first students in line at every game, I'm always in the front row. However, between the sidewalks here and the cabanas that go in front of it, I could usually be at least 30 feet away from the field, and I'm in the front row. You really don't want that. You want the guests as close as you can get them to the field. So why is this a challenge for UCF? Well, like Raymond James, you wouldn't actually be able to dig the field down. We're in Orlando, it's a huge swamp, so the only option we have is to stack up. Now, most football stadiums dig their fields down, like I said, and a lot of times, especially in college football stadiums, you enter for this second level right here would actually be at grade, which means the outside world would be at this level, and it digs down. Michigan Stadium is a good example of this. So it would be uniquely expensive and challenging for UCF to do this. Not too bad. Digging down does cost a lot too, so why even bother? Well, for all the reasons I said that every NFL stadium does it, it's massively practical, it frees up so much space, it's better for circulation, and it just makes a more cohesive product. So let's start the tour. Start over here on the east side, where I said the Wayne Dench Sports Center is. As you can see, the wrappings around it, this is all a dorm building, as I would put it. Yes, this entire block is a new dorm building. It's in the same architectural style as the Wayne Dench Sports Center is today. Why not make this castle? Well, there's a good reason for that. Most stadiums are built in the modern aesthetic. Why? Well, frankly, it's cheaper. It's cheaper to put concrete siding than it is to make a stone brick castle. It's very tempting for an athletic department or anybody because new is nice and shiny, it's cheaper, and a lot of times it's easier to generate revenue, like in the very ultra modern brand new tower. So why did I, in my pipe dream fantasy, put this giant building as modern? Well, frankly, if you don't save costs where you can, there's no chance for anything like this to happen. Modern is cheaper, and if you do it right, that's not necessarily a bad thing. My whole aesthetic with this stadium was combining modern and classic architecture. It's not a clash between the two, it's a touching embrace that works and respects both without intruding. So why dorms? Well, why? You may have heard me say that and think, what the heck, why are we putting dorms in a football stadium? Well, that goes back to my point about combining projects I said earlier. And dorms in football stadiums is actually something that's been done many times before to create much bigger, better stadiums. And some of the most iconic venues in the country were expanded exactly in this way. For example, LSU, Tennessee, Ohio State, all of their iconic stadiums were expanded by putting dorms, by wrapping them around with dorms. Jacksonville State, you may recognize them from last year, they're actually doing a project right now where they're doing exactly this. Their stands are supported by dorm buildings because combining the money from one project makes something else cheaper. UCF desperately needs more dorms. It's one of the things they actually write they need the most. So if they're going to build dorms anyway, why not combine the project with an exterior? If we were going to put something here anyway, it could have been a ginormous wall that would have been ridiculously expensive. Well, now, by putting in this dorm building that you were going to put elsewhere on campus anyway, you now have that pretty wall and a big, nice thing right there. So combining projects is one of the key aspects of building a stadium for the future on a limited, more realistic budget. I even have some fun potential ideas, like if you were to put this dorm building here, maybe this could be the dorms for all the athletes on campus. Have all the athletes live in one thing, take them out of where Towers is now, free that up for regular students that got to go closer to the regular campus, and maybe that's even a huge bit of culture. All the athletes live in one building. Stuff like that. There's millions of things you can do with creative ideas like that. So on the other side of this ginormous wall, we have where I would move the student section. One giant, uninterrupted student wall. Right now, in real life, the two student sections are the lower half of this and this entire side over here. But I would move them to the center for a handful of reasons. First of all, it looks fantastic for TV. Those cameras right there face directly where the students are over there. The cameras over here, when they're pointing down here, you'll always see are at an angle. The cameras want to go on the hypest, densest crowd, and why not do that right where they are, directly across from where it is? Perception is everything, especially with TV. So this section I'd have here is kind of like Virginia Tech's big wall or UF's other side. Currently today, this is where the Carl Black and Gold Cabana is, and many of you may know a lot of people have problems with the Carl Black and Gold Cabana because, well, frankly, people don't sit in their seats. And that's where the cameras point. If you, even on Big Noon Kickoff, where it was a hard sellout, you'd pan over, they'd look across, and there'd be tons of yellow empty seats, and it just looks terrible. And it's a hard sellout, too. It shouldn't look bad. You can have all these premium upgraded seats that people don't sit in, just don't make it where the cameras are looking. So you want a big, huge student section where they can look and pan and directly look across to. But why move away from the two separated student sections we have today? Well, there's a few reasons. The current one splits the vibe. I've sat in both student sections. I'm a permanent resident from now on of the ribbon side. But the one over here tends to, especially at the top, not fill in all the way, while the one over here, everyone's super crowded. When you separate it, people go for the bigger or smaller things, and it's not a good distribution. It should be distributed evenly, while over here it's crowded, over here it's too open. And also, it splits the vibe. Over here is a completely different vibe and feeling than over here. Now, both are good and bouncy and great, but it just separates the culture of the student section, where you want everybody united. One of the reasons they do it is for noise. That no matter what quarter it is, the driving team has to drive into the end zone. Has to drive into the end zone of a student section. Has to drive into the end zone of the student section and go into that wall of noise. While most people, especially Big 12 teams, have one student section in the end zone, we have it on both sides. But if you were to create a student section like this that spans end zone to end zone, one big wall, it doesn't matter where you are on the field, it's going to be loud. And that's the thing right up here. That leads us into the roof. This roof right here is one of the most requested things that you will ever hear. If you ever see anybody talking about what they want to renovate the stadium as, you will inevitably see, I need a big roof. It's so hot, it's so miserable. And that's part of the reason they have the Carl Black and Gold cabanas. But like I said, the problem is, they don't sit in their seats, they go underneath. It's a temporary solution that doesn't really solve the problem. Now, a lot of people would say, wrap the whole thing in a roof. But number one, that's very expensive and also not really necessary. Even before the old tower, I used to sit a lot where the equivalent of the seats are right over there, and at night, even with the small tower, it's shady. It's fine. Even at afternoon games, it's right over here that's the most hot and most miserable. So you put this roof. I've connected it to the dorm building. Go sideline to sideline, and that's about 80% of the problem solved right there. It takes these miserable, worthless seats and makes them great, and takes away all the bad things about them. So there's another thing about a roof is it does something super important that's arguably more important than shading the fans. It reflects noise. Now, there are stadiums that are built directly for noise, to reflect the noise back on the field. Think Seattle's Lumen Field or Highmark Stadium, Bills' new stadium, or Arrowhead. The roofs are specifically designed to put the noise back into there. Now, there is noise culture, especially in Seattle, but it's not necessarily that the fans of those stadiums, which are known as some of the loudest places on earth for sports, it's not necessarily that those fans are just better. It's that it's architecturally designed to be louder. So I picture this roof as sort of like Inter & Co.'s current stadium roof right now. You don't need it around the full thing. Do it just where you need it, and where you need it is this east sideline. It's great for shading the fans. It saves the miserable seats over here that would be the Carl Black and Gold Cabana people sitting underneath them and not in their seats facing the camera. Make a big student section, put a small roof over it, and reflect that loud tower of noise back to the field. While we're on top of it, you may have noticed that the visiting sideline is a little smaller than the home sideline. That's just one of those things that you can get away with when you're doing this. Now, I'm not sure I'd make it this small in real life. There's probably regulations and stuff, but why not make it smaller for the visiting team? It shouldn't be fun to come into the stadium, and that being said, you'll see this student section goes right up to the visiting sidelines with just a SEC UGA style hedge separating it. You want those students as close as they can to that sideline, just being loud, obnoxious, and annoying, and when you're all the way over here, you're pretty far from where they are. Those students don't really have an effect. You want that wall of students, that wall of noise right beyond that line. Now, I said that we need a second floor concourse. At any time a arena or stadium has concourses that aren't on ground level, you need ramps to get a ton of people out very quick. Tampa does this by just big old ramps that jut out into the corner that look like rectangles. They don't really look great, but they're functional. UF Stadium has spirals in some of the end zones. FSU's, they're built into those castle walls I was talking about. Remember, combining projects. Here I did something a little different. If we're going to build something anyway, why not take a necessary ugly bit of infrastructure and convert it into something beautiful? In this stadium build, I decided to take inspiration from a castle that's already in Florida, Castillo San de Marcos in St. Augustine. Castillo San de Marcos is known as a fortress with those big old iconic triangle-shaped bastions in the corners. So I took those iconic triangle shapes inspired by a real Florida castle and said, let's combine that with infrastructure. So these are the exit ramps for the stadium. These big old triangles are how fans would leave the stadium when it's big. So they'd take these ramps all the way down, and that's how they'd exit the stadium, just like that. Taking ugly, boring infrastructure and putting it as something smart and gorgeous is one of those things that really levels up a design. Make a boring structural feature into an architectural icon. While we're talking about Castillo Santa Marcos, we're building a castle, right? And you'd need bricks. Well, how about instead of bricks, we do something unique and take another page out of that book and do Florida limestone as the castle. At the very least, to save myself from getting accused of copying FSU's brick castle facade. Now, in these four corners, I have four pillars. One of the big things about castles, the four pillars, but in these two specifically, I have castle corner suites. Like I've always said, premium seating and premium upcharged venues are the number one, far and away most important thing. So, corner suites like this offer a unique viewing experience and a big suite that they could charge a lot of money for, giving unique angles and styles and just a unique thing in general that would really boost the premium acumen of the stadium. On the other side corners, I have two video boards. Now, number one, you just got to get rid of that stupid ribbon. I already said I'd keep that video board, but now, instead of another big one over here, I have two small ones in the corners. Now, the reason I have two small ones is better visibility. No side gets a better board, and frankly, it's cheaper than just taking another one of those big ones. Now, this west sideline, I've already said, almost identical to what it is today. The only difference I have is the bottom floor I've extended all the way to the ground and added some premium suites, and I have this cutout venue over here with lounge and suites areas. This is inspired by FSU's recent renovation, and like I said, premium suites are the number one thing. This is something they could do today. I've had ideas of calling this like the Round Table Club, you know? You gotta really lean into this castle stuff. The end zones. Now, you've seen these. Two floors, two different bowls. This smaller bowl goes to about the height where the sidewalk is today. Remember, I said there's a circular sidewalk around the whole thing on the bottom floor and a circular sidewalk up here. And this is stopping about exactly where that medium sidewalk is before the rest of it continues. So this concourse wraps around the whole area. And this 360 concourse is really where you get your modern, tasteful, cheaper, but nice, modern build-out that athletic departments really love to push. Why not keep the full bowl? Why are we doing the stacked stuff? There's a good reason for that. It keeps you a lot closer to the field. Right here, we're in the front row. We're about the same as 10 rows up, but as it is today, if you were that close at that height, you'd be about this far away. You're so much further in the traditional bowl than the stacked design. Now, traditional bowls are absolutely fantastic. Number one, it's great for aesthetic, and it just looks like the nice pile that I said there. But this does a few things. Like I said, you're closer. Sound reflection is another big thing. We have that roof. We reflect more sound down there. And it just keeps the footprint smaller and more contained. Now, this third level is open air. We have these big old end zone suites over here and on that side. I picture this kind of like Raymond James end zones, just higher up. As you can see, it goes back all the way to where the video board is today, so there's a lot of space back here where you could put shops and bathrooms and restaurants and carts and stuff, and have a good spot where people can stand and not necessarily have to sit in their seats, which is a big increasing trend in stadium design. Now, the last main thing I want to show you is how the heck do you get in? I showed you these exit ramps. Now, how do you come into the stadium? Well, I have these two big towers on both sides, and the main entrances on both. I have other side entrances too, but you come into the lobby and you take escalators up. In real life, it wouldn't be 3, but I just did it that way. So you take these escalators up, and that's how you'd get in. Escalators are pretty common in all the stadiums with this, but you can't use them to get out because they simply don't have enough capacity. When coming in, though, it's easy to just get somebody up and away from all that maintenance stuff underneath and put them right into where they are. Coming in, you take that escalator simply right up and come into where you are, and you come out down these ramps and come out around the moat. Ideally, this is a multi-phase project, I've already said, about 20-30 years, and you do it in chunks and phases. Phase 1, I'd say, is probably this huge single student section with the dorm building, because number one, it's the easiest to justify with other funds. Remember, I said the superpower about combining projects, and the roof is something that people demand. So this would be phase 1. Cutting off where the existing stuff is, it would just continue on. So one big student section would be phase 1 plus the housing. Phase 2, maybe the end zones. Phase 3 is the more premium towers and entries and cladding and castle aesthetic. And phase 4 would be like the architectural finishes, like towers and flags and like this big round concourse and floaty stuff and the moat and other silly stuff like that. It'd be something you build to over the years. It's not something I say you build today. It's something that comes together in phases of projects. So we've pretty much done the whole tour of the place, and I've went through each design decision and pretty much explained how and why it's possible and why I do it that way. Hopefully I've explained how it's not actually as unfeasible as you might think. Remember that TDT, it's a secret weapon. Building something like this would attract the money, and that's even before the fan-based donations, boosted brand image, and vastly increased naming rights to the stadium. The TDT is basically a blank check from Orlando to build cool stuff like this. You just have to have a proposal good enough, and this would be. Like I've said, like it or not, revenue generation comes first. There's a reason FSU built this cutout thing in their stadium before doing anything else like fixing the ugly interior of their concourse. Revenue generation comes first, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if it's cheap and neglects everything else, which, unfortunately, a lot of times does. It can be a good thing if the renovation is planned to, in addition and as a vision, growing with everything else. These corner suites are a addition and a combination with a big tower that adds the aesthetic of the stadium. It's a combination. These suites are benefited by the tower, and the tower is funded by the suites. It's aesthetic choices like that and other various revenue generation streams. If you do it right and combine it with the right projects, you can get it done. And there's another, I keep saying the biggest thing that can make these things possible is combining projects. This whole giant wall right here, it's currently the ugliest side of the thing, of the stadium. A big, ginormous block like this that goes sideline to sideline that would currently be just a bunch of underside of stadium, kind of boring and nothing. A ginormous project like this can pretty much be, from the athletics department perspective, self-funded, because you were going to buy the dorms anyway, so why not tweak the design a little bit and combine it with other projects. There's also other things you could combine with other projects. I mean, there's something that gets demanded all the time, like the UCF Sports Hall of Fame. I have that here. In this design, we'll go into this whole area a little bit later, but it's intro areas like that that make entire sidelines suddenly possible to renovate. Like I said, there are ways to do things if you are creative and want to. We could renovate today, and we could put in some new sidelines on the east side or something that would look good, or wrap the brick that's already there up, but that's not going to look good in 10 years. The decisions and renovations you make today should be part of a bigger plan to build something greater. Not an upgrade, a step on the path to building a mecca of college football. Alright, let's pivot to the fun stuff. Some of these ideas are less serious than others, but some of them could be implemented for basically free. First of all, you gotta talk about the moat. If you build a moat, that is one of the most instantly iconic things that is impeccable for your brand. I'm picturing it now. If you remember in 2022 when Tennessee fans stormed the field, tore the goalpost down, and walked it over there to the river and dumped it in, I'm picturing it now. Winning some huge game in the bounce house, tearing that goalpost down, going through these access areas and out the door and dumping them right in there in that river. Would that not be one of the greatest things in the history of the program? Now, part of the moat, if you're going to have a moat, you got to have a drawbridge. Now, obviously, you see there's bridges everywhere because you can't shove 70,000 people through this little thing, but it doesn't really matter. Just lowering that drawbridge could be so cool. I'm picturing it now, 2 hours before the game when entrances are about to start letting people in. They shoot off a firework or some bang or something, and they lower that drawbridge, ting, 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 ting. You saw that in the video. That could be one of the most iconic things, one of the most iconic traditions of a program. It's stuff like that. Now, we talked about the UCF Hall of Fame. Did that over here. This is kind of currently underneath the right side of where the tower is, but it's just another thing that self-funds renovations. Like building this entire platform out here and these stands, pretty expensive. This big old wall, pretty expensive. When 80% of it was the funds for a Hall of Fame that probably was going to get built anyway. You can make these prices reduce earlier. Now here's another fun thing. We have George O'Leary statue, and I have some more statues of Dante Culpepper, Mackenzie Milton, Kevin Smith, Blake Bortles, some of the most iconic people in the program. I've always had this fun idea. We're building the castle, we're making bricks. Why not have a brick for every win? The wins that built this castle. And if you go in St. Leo all the way down to space games and stuff, you could even do stuff like special games, have a different color brick. These bricks, you color one in, and every game that you win, you put it over there. That's something that you take, that's a icon of the program. And it's so simple and so cheap. I'm even picturing in the spring or the fall, right before a season starts, they're at a round table or some special event where they unveil them. That's where they unveil the win bricks from the last season before they move on. That's the kind of things that make programs, that are the most iconic things in programs. And, you know, like I said, you can do different colors for big wins or championships and bowl games. You know, we got the Natty over here, the space games in blue. It's cheap, simple, creative things like this. Just making a wall with engraved bricks for every win. That are the foundational cultures of programs. While we're at it, back in the day in Knights Plaza, there used to be rocks on the way up with big moments in the history, right over here and over here, over here. Where the heck did those go? You haven't seen those in a while. Well, I'm thinking of it, murals. One of the best things about the Bounce House today is all the murals on all the rooms. That's something that you don't need to do anything for. There shouldn't be a blank or boring wall in the stadium. They should pay and just cover those things in those awesome, awesome, awesome murals. And that's something that you can't get anywhere else that people absolutely love. Now, another thing. Anybody remember Vinny the Vulture? Vinny the Vulture was actually the first mascot of UCF. No, the Citronaut was never actually a mascot. Vinny the Vulture was the first thing that was actually voted on as a mascot. And if Auburn can have an eagle fly over, I don't see why we can't have Vinny, the UCF Vulture, fly onto the center of the field earlier. And that was in the UCF Gameday of the Future video. You saw them come from this perch right here. And this right here, I would call the Royal Balcony. You saw I had the trumpeters, which start the band pregame sequence. You put them up here, and that's a perch that's just an instant icon of the thing. That make them look like heralds in an elevated spot, as well as Vinny takes off from that same perch and dives onto the center of the field with all the fans watching. There's also other things you could do with a perch like that, like currently at a lot of games, Nitro stands on top of the tower and dances and stuff. You could have it here. Now for a fun one, Sword in the Stone. If Clemson can have a stupid rock, we could take a page out of Magic Kingdom and put a absolute keystone icon of the program right there. It's an idea like that is in the grand scheme of a project of a athletics department, it's so cheap, and they could just do that. And a Sword in the Stone would be one of the most epic icons in all of college football. Behind that, we saw in the video, this is where the home team comes out, same place it is today, as well as that is, didn't change it. We have a portcullis, the gate, and it lifts up. Imagine in the pregame sequence, we saw it in the video, one of the most popular things on college football YouTube's videos is top 10 most epic stadium team entrances. And you know what? A gate cage slowly opening in front of the team to let them out would be one of those things that's so awesome that you can lean into. On the other hand, we saw cannons. Did you know back in the Citrus Bowl days, we used to have cannons? I don't know why the heck they ever got rid of that, because cannons are cool. Simple as. So, some other more general things are more specific designated seating areas, like reserved sections. A lot of more premier schools, like Georgia or Alabama, does this with like a frat or sorority reserved section. That's a big thing, especially at Alabama, those big old SEC schools. Part of the student section is reserved for frats, so they can have their own little thing, and a lot of times they pay to rent it out. Or they pay a little bit to the school. Other ideas for that are like a faculty section. That's another thing that's big in a lot of more premier schools is one section that's reserved just for faculty so they can all sit together and it really feels like a special treat and like you're really appreciating them. We already have a ticket allotment for faculty, so why not just let them all sit together? Another thing that's pretty common is a military section. UCF has a very deep connection with active serving military students, and they win a ton of awards and stuff for that. About 6.5% of UCF's student body is active military, which is even more than a lot of schools that lean into it really heavy, like Virginia Tech or Texas A&M have. Now, I'm not sure I'd lean into it as much as Texas A&M because the whole "we're a military school" LARP is kind of their whole thing, but you get the idea. It's stuff like that. It's just a classification that could really make a thing. So, let's recap. We've done the tour, we've said a bunch of small ideas. There's a stadium that UCF left, the Citrus Bowl. We started with it, we abandoned it, it was rotting. UCF outgrew the Citrus Bowl, but ironically, as a physical stadium, today it's better than ours in a lot of ways. It's been upgraded, renovated, and gutted about 4 times since we've moved in the 20 years that we've moved away. Today, it has better amenities, infrastructure, higher capacity, more event capability, and overall polish. I mean, it's going over a major renovation as we speak. It still gets the major neutral site bowl games, concerts, and other events that the Bounce House doesn't get today. I mean, we keep fighting to get the Cure Bowl. With Jacksonville Jaguars temporarily moving games there and Tampa planning to use it after they leave, the Citrus Bowl is only going to keep getting investment, and it's only going to continue to be the better venue of Orlando. 20 years after leaving a rotting dump, the Citrus Bowl is better than UCF Stadium is today. The goal should not be to upgrade the Bounce House over the next 20 to 30 years. The goal should be to make one of the most iconic venues in college football. A stadium immediately recognizable as UCF's and not just stupid aluminum bleachers we have today. A stadium that recruits dream to play in, potential students are awestruck when they see on campus tours, alumni want to return to, and national broadcasts can't get enough of showing that iconic student section. One of my general tips for stadiums being iconic is if it's not one of those stadiums selling those multi-layer wooden coffee table things, it's not iconic enough. UCF needs a stadium capable of competing with events that currently default to the Citrus Bowl. UCF needs a stadium so good that one day it forces the city of Orlando to finally pull the plug on stupid Camping World Stadium altogether. The most important thing is, like I said, it's not as impossible as you may think. UCF has advantages that make it an ambitious long-term build more realistic than it sounds. Like I said, tourism development tax and money. That's free tens and hundreds, potentially, of millions of dollars in free renovation money. The Roth Tower already proved how amazing that can be for us. An iconic event-capable stadium becomes a much easier tourism investment than the recent ones they debated and shot down, and the tower, which they gave $70 million for. The other big superpowers combining projects, remember, dorms, Hall of Fame, mostly the dorms, that's one of the biggest things. Stadium facades, lower levels, anything can be combined with other projects. Premium space is one of the most important, and to many athletic departments, the only thing they consider renovating for, because it provides additional funds and additional revenue per game. But cheaper premium renovations can add on to rather than subtract or do nothing for existing or future infrastructure. Ugly necessary infrastructure like exit ramps that typically get ignored can become an iconic part of the stadium design. Remember, Castillo San DeMarcos is our exit ramps. A roof can provide shade, which saves the currently ugly TV empty seat facing area as a loud, iconic, ginormous student section that reflects sound back onto the field. UCF's going to spend money to renovate the stadium eventually. The question is whether they spend it reacting to problems, doing small, not very well thought out long-term projects like Houston's stupid ironcladding around the outside, or whether they want to spend it working towards something bigger. Cheap additions that a lot of athletic departments are doing can solve today's problem, and they can even make a lot of money doing so. But they create problems for when you want to grow eventually. A good vision for a stadium Let's every renovation become one piece of an eventual finished mecca of the sport. My plea is this. The original bounce house was the greatest investment UCF ever made because it was exactly what the UCF of 2007 needed. Cheap, practical, and finally ours. But the next investments UCF should make shouldn't be about just getting over the hump. It should be making UCF legendary.